Hey guys, today I'm going to replace the spark plugs in my Chevy Trailblazer. This is a 2008 Trailblazer and it has the 5.3 liter V8 engine. Most Trailblazers have the 4.2 liter inline 6, and if you have that, the spark plug locations are going to be totally different, so this video might not be useful. But for any of the 5.3 liter V8s and probably the Trailblazer SS with the 6 liter, this video should be useful for seeing where the spark plugs are. Now, I'm not a mechanic, so I can't really talk you through diagnosing when you have a spark plug problem, but I'm pretty sure I do have a spark plug problem, so I'm going to replace them. I've done this repair before a few years ago, so this is not my first time. In many cars, it might not even be worth making this video because it's so easy to replace the spark plugs. But the way they wedged this engine into this truck was made for the 6-cylinder engine, so some of the spark plugs are easy to get to, some are hard to get to, and some are really hard to get to. So I think it's worthwhile for me to make this video. So anyway, spark plugs are pretty cheap. I got the high-end AC Delco Iridium plugs, and they were under $7 each. So 7 times 8 is $63. That's pretty cheap to replace all 8 plugs. And hopefully these plugs last for the rest of this truck's life. I'm not replacing the wires because I replaced the wires the last time I did this, so they're not very old. Also, one important note. In this video, I do not use a torque wrench to properly torque down each plug, but you really should do that, especially with what I discover as I go through the spark plugs in this repair. Definitely use a torque wrench. So the last time I replaced the spark plugs, it made a very noticeable difference, so I'm hoping the same thing happens today. So the first step is to pop the hood and let it cool off because it's a hot day anyway, and so it's extra hot under there. So I'm gonna jack up the truck, and while I'm doing that, hopefully it cools off. It's useful to jack up the truck because you can take the front wheels off, and some of the spark plugs are easier to access from inside the wheel wells. So here you can see some of those spark plugs are very easily accessible, but then on the other side I can't even see them. I don't even know where they are, but they're in there somewhere. All right, here's one of the new spark plugs. Now these plugs come pre-gapped, so you don't have to gap them. And I actually read you're not supposed to gap them because they have a special coating on them, and that coating is so thin that it can actually scratch off if you put a gapping tool in there. So I'm not going to gap any of these. I'm just going to install them as is. I have a piece of cardboard here numbered. This is the order I'm going to replace them in, and the reason I have them numbered is so I can put the old ones in their spot so I can inspect them when I'm done, and if any of them look damaged, I'll know which cylinder it came out of. And I have a socket wrench with a wide array of extensions and universal joints, so I'll probably use all of those by the end of this. And I have some dielectric grease which you use to put on the boot so that the boot won't get stuck to the spark plug. You don't want to use that on the metal contacts, just the rubber or plastic parts. And I have a milk crate because now that the truck's jacked up, I can't really reach the engine very easily. But let's start with the easy side first because I don't think I even have to remove the wheels on that side. And we'll go from there. Okay, I'm even shorter than I realized, so I upgraded from the milk crate to this bench that's a little taller. All right, so you reach way down in there and the boot just pulls right off, except it's too hot to do this. Oh my God. I'll have to let it cool off a little longer and try again in a few minutes. So the spark plug boot should slide right off. So I had a little trouble getting all 8 of the spark plug boots off. They all kind of got stuck and I had to fight with them, but I'm not going to show that in the video for every single one. So I'm just going to cut right to them popping right off. All right. So the plug pops off. Now you need to find the right combination of extensions so you can get the socket on the spark plug. Wow, that spark plug seems to be very loose. That's not good. I wonder what would cause that. Also, it's really tight in there, so it's really a pain to get it out. All right, first one's out. go put this on the cardboard. All right, here's the new one. So I'm going to hand thread that in there and then tighten it with the wrench afterwards. And you really can't see the hole when you're doing this, so you have to just feel around and do it by touch. But once it starts threading in easily by hand, then you know you're in there. So let's use the wrench.
My hat blocks the camera here, but the metal sleeve just slides right off of the rubber spark plug boot.
So we want to get a little bit of that grease inside this rubber here, so when we slide it on, it won't stick to the spark plug. But somehow we want to make sure that the grease doesn't get on the actual electrical connector of the spark plug. So I'm using the old spark plug to just poke a hole in the grease there. There we go, that worked pretty good. I'm gonna put the sleeve back on.
What I'm doing here is just pushing the spark plug boot back on the new spark plug. It's hard to get a good grip on it because of the angles and the tight spaces, but you just have to keep pushing and eventually it will pop on.
All right, 1 down, 7 to go. And unfortunately that was the easy one. So I want to make sure that that one is on right before I continue. So I'm going to start up the engine real quick just to make sure everything's running and it's not misfiring. Yep, sounds good. All right, so we're just going to repeat the exact same process for number 2. All right. So the funny thing about that was I didn't actually pull it out with the pliers, but the pliers gave me something to rest my hand on so I could rotate my wrist and pull it out a little easier. Bend that over, get the socket in there. Right, that one wasn't too loose. You probably can't see what I'm doing, but I'm just turning the socket by hand. It's loose, but it's threaded in there pretty deep. Now I'm hand unthreading the spark plug itself because I can just reach the end of it. And here we go, number 2. Here's replacement number 2. Right, now the grease again. Take the metal sleeve off. Put a little grease on the opening there. And use that first spark plug again, so poke a hole in the grease. Right, and sleeve goes back on. All right, number 2 finished. There we go. Here we go, spark plug number 3. All right, here's replacement number 3. Let's throw that in there. That looks right. So 3 down, 5 to go. From this point on, they get a lot more complicated. Number 4 is going to be hard to film. It's way down there. You can just see it right there. So the other 3 were easy. That one's behind some tubing, so you're not really going to be able to see what I'm doing, but I'm just doing the same thing that I did for all the rest of them. Here. There we go. Actually came out pretty easy. Oh wow. I'm unscrewing this one by hand. That is not good. I don't know how this truck was running, but it was running pretty good. Here's number 4. All right, here's replacement number 4. It goes way down and around and behind. Oh. Okay. All right, so pull the sleeve off. Throw a little grease on there. Work it in with the old spark plug. Put the sleeve back on. And push that back onto the spark plug. All right, I'm going to give it another startup test real quick. All right, we're halfway done. Now things get way more complicated. So I'm going to go grab my impact driver and take the front wheel off. All right, so in where the wheel well was, there's number 1, there's number 2, there's number 3, and then number 4 is completely behind the strut tower. So I can't show it to you, but it's back there and we're gonna have to reach around and grab it. So on my number sheet, this was number 5, so we're gonna start with that one. And again, just like before, things are gonna get really hard for you to see because there's just no angles, and half of what I'm doing is by touch because even I can't see. But I'll try to get you some kind of view. There we go. Now I need an interesting collection of extensions and a universal joint. All right, got it. This is number 5. All right, here's number 5's replacement. That's in there. Right, can we do the grease thing from here? That's going to be tricky. Actually, maybe not. All right, that is number 5 done. On to number 6. All right, number 6 might be a little bit easier because I can actually get line of sight right through here. I still have to go underneath to access it. Yeah, that came off pretty easy. All right, number 6. All right, replacement number 6. All right, grease the boot. All right, it looks like it's in there. All right, so number 6 done. On to number 7. 7 and 8 are definitely the hardest two. Oh boy, you can see it way up there, but it's going to be hard to get this in and out. All right, these pliers came through after all. Yep. So that was number 7, but I just lost it. All right, number 7. So when it fell down in there, I couldn't see it anywhere. So I got on my creeper and slid under the truck, and I was able to see it poking through one of the holes. That's usually the way it goes when you drop something in there. If you get under the truck, usually you can kind of feel around and find it. It's important you don't just leave it, because it wouldn't be impossible for something like a spark plug to start interfering with the steering system. It could get jammed between different parts of that, and suddenly you'd be driving and you wouldn't be able to turn your truck, and that would be very bad. So this one's done. Let's go get the replacement. All right, number 7 goes way up there. Yep, sorry.
Well, when I was working on this spark plug boot, I didn't realize that you couldn't actually see it. It wasn't in front of the camera. But what I did here is the same thing I did for all the rest. I put a little of the dielectric grease inside the boot. I used the old spark plug to kind of smear it around. Then I put the metal shield back on the boot, and then I plugged the boot back into the spark plug.
All right, on to number 8. Number 8 is the hardest one. There's really nothing to even show you because I have to do it all by feel. I'll try to at least show you where I'm reaching. Actually, it's slightly better than I just made it sound. So you can see this is the brace for the shocks, and there's a hole in the back. And if you look up that hole, but right in here, that's where the spark plug is. You can't reach it from there, but you can reach it by going up and behind. So right now my hand is on the boot. I don't think you can see my fingers because they're so dark. Oh, there you go. You can see my fingers. So we can go in through here with the socket extension to unscrew it and screw it in after I pull the boot off. Oh, there we go. let me show you what I did, because that was kind of interesting. So these boots are hard to pull out with one hand, but if you get two hands on them, they're a lot easier. So I have my left hand over the top and reaching down, and then I put my right hand around the back to the side, and I was able to get two hands on it. And once I did that, I was able to pop it off pretty easily. I can't tell if I have it or not. Okay, yeah, I think I have it. Which means I think this was another very loose one. I take that back. That wasn't loose. I think I was just not on it. I need one more extension here. There we go. That helps. All right. So here's number 8. All right, here's the new number 8, the last one. This is going to be very tricky to get in there. If I had 3 hands, this would be a lot easier. So I just keep turning the socket, and I have no idea if I'm actually in the spark plug hole or not. And I'm just randomly trying to twist it in there to see if I can get it to just magically hit the threads and start threading in. Because once it starts threading in, then I can just crank it down and everything's good. No, I think I just got it. All right. Let me try to get my eyes on it to make sure it's not going in crooked. No, that looks right. All right, that's pretty tight. Now you can see the boot right up here. So I'm going to do the grease thing up here and then feed it back down. I'm totally blocking you, I am aware. But there's nothing I can do about that this time. All right, I'm going to put the boot back on. And I'm going to feed this back down. So that same hole that I put the socket through, I'm going to use just the socket extensions to try to push against the plug to make sure it's on nice and tight. That seems to be working, and it seems to be on. All right, I'm going to start it up real quick. One last test before I put things back together.
Okay, it ran great. It definitely wasn't misfiring, so now I'm going to put the wheel back on.
All right, let's go for a little drive and see how it runs. Hopefully it runs a little better, but as long as it doesn't run worse, I'll be happy. All right, I guess I should have cleaned my windshield before filming this. But the truck is running great. I can feel how it has a lot more low-end power and it doesn't struggle when you're driving light on the gas pedal. This is a V8 engine shoved in a pretty small truck, so you shouldn't have to give it much gas to drive at normal speeds. And that's definitely how it feels now. It felt strained before, like the motor was just worn out when you were at low throttle. Now here's what the old plugs looked like. They really don't look that bad, so it's entirely possible that my problem wasn't that the plugs needed to be replaced. It could have just been that some of them were loose, causing me to have low compression and low power. The engine also sounds different. It's quieter and smoother. It almost sounded like I had an exhaust leak before, but the sound came on so gradually that I didn't really notice until it was gone. So that also makes me think that my real problem was just loose spark plugs. I definitely tightened the plugs the last time I replaced them 2 years ago, so it seems like some of them work themselves loose. I'll have to retighten these new ones next spring to make sure they're still snug. Also, I did not use a torque wrench to tighten the plugs either this time or when I did it 2 years ago, but I'll borrow one and use it next time just to make sure they're properly tightened. Alright, well I didn't fix the problem I thought I was fixing, but I definitely fixed something. This truck is running much better now and I'm very happy. Hopefully there's enough Trailblazer V8 owners still out there for some people to find this video useful. Alright, that's all for now. See you next time.